Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce our speaker for this hour. Guy Hammond is the founder and director of the Strength and Weakness Ministry. He has been doing this for over 20 years. He speaks globally. He has spoken in over 90 countries. He has reached out to well over 100,000 people in his messages that he's been sharing as he helps people to deal with the LGBTQ people of our community. He has some wonderful things to say. He, this weekend, has really blessed our congregation in incredible ways. He spoke of, this will be his sixth lesson. All of them are recorded. These two this morning are, of course, live streamed. I would encourage you, if you were not able to attend his sessions, that you might go to our website. You'll find them archived there, and you'll be able to hear what he has to say about a number of really important issues. Anyway, Guy is a wonderful man. He's a loving man. He's a kind man. He's passionate about his ministry, and he's passionate about the Lord's Word in his church. So without me saying any more, Brother Guy Hammond.
All right, wow, thank you so much. So wonderful to be with you folks. Appreciate the hospitality of everybody here in Boise. My name is Guy Hammond. I come from Toronto, Canada, and always nice to be down here in the States and be with you folks. So thank you very much. I had a wonderful time this weekend. Hopefully those of you who came to the classes, you feel better equipped to deal with these really multifaceted issues that we've been discussing. All things about LGBTQ and faith, while, controversial, multifaceted, tough conversation to have. And a lot of Christians really struggle with this stuff because, we are just unsure really how to approach it. And it's intimidating. So I'm hoping that after me being here this weekend, you're now going home going, you know what? It's not that intimidating after all. I think I've got some strategies on how to, care for, love, show hospitality to the people in my community and my family with that background. And, it's not that scary after all. So hopefully that was what has been accomplished. This morning for this lesson, actually, I'm not going to go down that path. You guys have heard more than enough on that issue since Friday night. This morning, I'm going to talk a little bit about, in a very practical way, how you and I should deal with the one thing that we can all absolutely relate to, and that is temptation. I wish I could stand here today and tell you how easy it is for me to be a good man, to live righteously, to hold firmly to the moral ethics of Scripture, to be a holy person. I wish I could tell you that after, 38 years, almost 4 decades of faithful Christian living, after decades of really trying to get this right, that I now have such control over my mind, such a mastery over my heart and my feelings, and such power over my actions that I always defeat all the temptations that come my way. But that would not be the truth. The reality is, most days I actually find it a battle to do what is right. When I look honestly at my life, the hard truth is that in spite of my best efforts to obey God, I've been selfish, lazy, lustful, angry, vengeful, unforgiving, envious, jealous, moody, self-centered, indulgent, hateful, prejudiced, spiteful, impure, and critical. And that was all just this morning. Not really. But after nearly 4 decades, that's my resume. And, I do think after, really striving to put into practice different strategies and be a faithful man and rely on prayer and rely on God, I do think, after all these years, I really do spend the majority of my day overcoming temptation, but I still have moments of failure. But they are surrounded by hours of victory. So, I'm not a completely lost cause. I don't have a PhD in overcoming temptation, but I've passed a couple of courses after 40 years of Christianity. Of course, the only person who was able to claim that they overcome absolutely every temptation they ever faced was Jesus. And since he's not able to be with you here this morning in person, you get me. So, let me deal with it. But, temptation, that's pretty universal. We can all relate to it. If Jesus was in the audience, he could even relate to that. For even Jesus himself was tempted in every way, just as we are, yet, of course, he was the only one who was able to do that without sin. Think of that kind of language. Every temptation, just as we are. Wow, Jesus? Oh my goodness. What a challenging life that guy must have had. You think of just all the different kinds of temptations that are just represented in this room. Not to mention the, 8 billion people who are walking the planet. I mean, if we were all to stand up right now and every single one of us was going to honestly talk about the different kinds of temptations we faced in the last 24 hours, this room would get real dark real fast. To think that Jesus experienced all of that and more is just incredible. And you know what? None of us are crazy about the idea of temptation. We wish temptation wasn't a part of the Christian life, but it is. It is our reality. But you know what? I think, guys, that actually temptation has kind of gotten a bad rap. And I think it would do us well to have a new perspective on the issue, to redefine it a little bit in our minds. So I appreciate the reading that we had this morning in James chapter 1. The first thing I want to point out is that actually, from God's perspective, temptation was never meant to be a negative thing. In the scripture that we had, of course, I'm reading from the NIV, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Then when you shoot down to verse 12, it says, "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." Now, the word trials here can equally be translated into the word temptations. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face temptations of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. You see, the truth about temptation is this. Temptation is as much an occasion for you and I to do the right thing as it is for you and I to do the wrong thing. I'm learning that actually a temptation really should be kind of an exciting part of our day. While Satan is using temptation as a weapon of mass destruction in our life, God allows temptation in order to develop our spiritual life. Temptation provides that opportunity of choice for us every single day, where we get to choose to whether or not we will be in the right or we will be in the wrong. And every time we overcome the enticement to sin, we become just a little bit more like Jesus. There's few things that you will do in the next 24 hours to be more like Jesus than to say no to temptation. You're going to do a lot of things in the next 24 hours. We're all important people. We're all really busy. We got kids to raise and, dinners to make and jobs to go to and different events flying around all over the place. I'm sure there's football. I'm in America. I'm sure there must be a football game on this afternoon you're all going to be watching sometime. Isn't there? Isn't there a football game this afternoon? Yeah, I knew. I'm in America. Of course there is. We got a lot of important things to do in the next 24 hours, but I put before you that there are a few things you'll do in the next 24 hours to show your devotion to God than to overcome the enticement to sin. It's one of the most significant moments in your day. Temptation is a pivotal instant in time. An instant where you alone must choose. At that moment, there's no church, no preacher, no elder, no friend, no spouse, no parent to make this decision for you. It's just you, Jesus, and the devil. The truth is, there's very things that you get to do in life where you just get to choose what you want to do. We're surrounded by rules and laws and boundaries. I mean, I don't know, let's say you're at work and you notice there's a stapler there at the desk and you think to yourself, I need a stapler. Well, instead of going to Staples, no pun intended, do you have Staples here? Oh, you do, okay. I just thought it was a Canadian thing. Okay, you want the stapler, but you just can't take that stapler. It's not yours. If you take that stapler home, that's called stealing, so you can't do that. I don't know, you're driving down the road, you're in a hurry, but the speed limit says, what's the speed limit in Idaho? What do you guys do here? On the highway, what do you do? 55? 65, that's a little bit faster. Okay, that's better. Okay, you're going 65. I mean, you can't go, 80 or 90. I know you want to sometimes. I saw some of you driving to church this morning. Some of you did actually. But, you're not supposed to, right? The government tells you only how fast you can go. Or, I don't know, You come home from work, man, it's been a long day. You're just exhausted. Oh my goodness. You walk in the door and the kids are screaming and all you want to do is just plop on the couch and turn on the TV. But you can't do that, right? You know why? Because the kids have got the remote. You're not free just to watch whatever you want. See, we're surrounded, but you can't just do anything you want anytime. But at this moment, at a time of temptation, yeah, it's actually just you and Jesus and the devil. You get to do whatever you want. It's one of the few times in life that actually happens. And heaven and hell are both watching. And they're waiting to see your declaration of loyalty. Who is it that you have decided to follow? And that's why temptation is not only critical, it's exciting. It's your chance to live out your Christianity in real time. It's your decisive moment when you get to put into practice everything you believe. I mean, some of you have been coming to church for decades, every Sunday night, Wednesday nights. I mean, how many church services have you been to? How many times have you cracked the Bible to read it and daily devotion? And, how many lectureships and classes? And my goodness, we're into the thousands. That's all an important part of Christianity. But, when the rubber hits the road, it's during a moment of temptation that you actually get to put all that stuff you just learned into practice. Other than that, all it was a bunch of classes to go to. It matters how are you going to live today? How are you going to treat people? How are you going to act towards people? How are you going to think of others? How are you going to think in your mind? What are you going to participate in? It's the moment when God and his angels lean in to see whether you will merely talk about following Jesus or whether you will actually walk like Jesus. I put before you, there may be no thrilling moment in your day wherein temptation comes to you and you get the chance to declare to the universe where your devotions truly lie. Man, I find that exciting. Bring it on. I already want the next temptation. Gives me my chance to do this. The second thing that we need to understand is that temptations and trials are even necessary. Engineers tell us that the only way metal can be safely used is after testing it several times, and not just once, but repeatedly. And every time it has to exceed the testing requirements. The metal to be used, or the metal that was used to build the plane that I'm going to fly back to Canada in tomorrow, I hope that metal was pure. And the only way for it to be purified, to turn itself into an airplane, is that it's got to be melted down, it's got to be refined, and then it's got to be molded to fit the designer's purpose. In the same way, just as metal must be purified and tested, we too must be tested before God for him to be able to use us for his purposes. The necessity of trials and temptations, they teach us several things. Number one, temptation isn't meant to make you sin. It's meant to give you the chance to not sin. It's not meant to make you bad. It actually gives you the opportunity to choose good. It's not meant to weaken you. God uses it to make you stronger, finer, and purer. Temptation isn't a penalty. It's a privilege. It's God's way of preparing us for greater use in his service. Nature takes this and shows us this as well. The cocoon of the emperor moth is flask-like in shape. It must find its way through the narrow opening of the cocoon, often for hours, in a struggle that looks cruel and unnecessary. But entomologists explain that this very pressure forces a life-giving substance into its wings. Without the struggle, the moth will never be able to fly. And so it is with us. Sorrow, suffering, trials, and tribulations are not accidents. They are wisely designed by God to grow us into the likeness of Christ. I've discovered that some of my greatest seasons of spiritual growth have come not through my successes, but through my failures, through my mistakes that I've made, and the times that I got it wrong. In that sense, even failure can be a blessing in your life. And the refining and developing process, sometimes it feels so slow. Sometimes it takes years and decades for us to turn into the likeness of Jesus in a certain area. Sometimes it seems slow and painful, but by God's grace, we will emerge stronger, pure, and more useful, ready for his purposes. You know, it tells us in Romans 12, verse 2, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You know, our minds are not to be conformed, but transformed. To conform means to simply adhere, to fit into a mold, to adhere to take on the shape of what's around us. But to transform means to have our very nature, our essence, changed. You know, the Greek word that Paul uses here is the root word of our English word metamorphosis. It's the same word that we use to describe what happens to a caterpillar when it turns into a butterfly. You know, what used to once crawl around in the dirt, inching along into the ground, is suddenly lifted into the sky, soaring in the freedom of flight. Spiritually speaking, that butterfly picture is of us, set free from the mud of sinful behavior, from the bondage of slavery to cravings and habits that once held us down. And metamorphosis is not just a slight adjustment, it's a total transformation of our nature, and it's what God enables us to go through by his power to walk in freedom every single day. Third, I think it's important for us to recognize that we need to plan for the temptations that we're going to go through. I don't know why this is, but there's so many things we plan for. For whatever reason, we don't plan for temptation. It means one thing we know is going to happen today. Most of us have no strategy in place. I mean, we plan for everything else. We plan our schedules, our schoolwork. We plan how we're going to get the job done. We plan what we're going to wear. We plan what top matches what skirt. We plan what we're going to watch on TV. We plan what we're going to record. We plan on who we're going to call. We plan on who we're going to text. We plan our finances and our spending patterns. We plan our futures. We plan our vacations. We plan everything. But for some strange reason, most of us put little, if any, thought into the one thing we absolutely know is guaranteed we're going to go through in the next 24 hours, and that is temptation. No plan, no strategy, just dump, and I'm walking around and here it comes. No. We know it's coming. We know it's certain, yet we're not prepared for it. You know, one strategy that I have found incredibly helpful is just this. Okay, a temptation comes. Consider the consequences. Just stop and think for a second. You know, pause. Think about what it is that you want to do. Almost every time you realize it's not going to be worth it. I know you want to have that toothpaste out of the tube moment with your wife. Boy, you want to let her have it, or you want to let your husband have it, or, you just want to let mom and dad know what you really think. I mean, just cool your jets for a second and think about what's about to come out of your mouth. Is it really worth the consequence? I know you want to look at that website. I know you want to go to this place. I know you want to hang out with that friend. I know you want to give into that thought or fantasy. I know you want to. But just come on, just slow things down. That one careless word in anger may wound somebody of someone that you love for years. That small compromise in honesty could destroy your reputation in an instant. That fleeting moment of lust may leave you guilty and ashamed for hours. Is it worth it? Stop, slow down, pause, consider the consequences of what it is you're about to do. And remember, no temptation lasts forever. If you just hang on for a couple of minutes, it'll pass. The moment will fade, and you'll still be standing. You're going to make it. And when you do stand, when you resist, then there's joy, then there's peace, then there's freedom. Nothing compares to the clean conscience and quiet confidence of knowing you chose obedience over compromise. That's the kind of victory that only strengthens your soul, but also puts a smile on God's face. You know, our world tells us that the way to dignity is found in self-independence. God tells us the way to dignity is found in standing strong through temptation. Our world tells us that honor comes through self-strength and pride. God tells us that true honor is found in humility before Him and before others. Our world tells us to hide our weaknesses. God tells us to confess them openly and even to boast about them. Our world tells us that our faults, our flaws, and our vulnerable points are nothing but shame. God tells us that when we are weak, then we are strong. Our world tells us that depending on God and others is a crutch. But God tells us that relying on him and his people is the very path forward. In closing, I would be remiss. I would be remiss not to mention the obvious. And that is where I began this morning. That in spite of our best efforts, every single one of us will not overcome every temptation that we do in the next 24 hours. None of us are perfect. I don't get perfect people. You know where I see perfect people? In churches. I don't get it. Like, if you're perfect, you don't need to be here. Right? A church is supposed to be a spiritual hospital for spiritually sick people who realize they're sick and they need help. Jesus, of course, is going to be the great physician. Well, who goes to the hospital when they're not sick? If you're not sick, why did you come here today? Your very attendance is an acceptance of the reality that you're sick. You're spiritually sick. You need help. You need guidance. You need forgiveness. And that you're not doing any of this perfectly. I don't understand why Christians have such a hard time being open and honest and transparent about the things that they struggle with. I don't get it. I don't understand perfect people. You know those kinds of perfect people. Like there was this guy in the church I grew up in, and every Sunday, Brother Brown, how are you today? Great. Fantastic. Every Sunday, year after year. How you doing? Everything's great. Really? After 20 years? How is everything great all the time? Your finances are great. Your kids are great. Your home is great. Your hair is great. You know those kinds of people you get in their car and everything's nice and clean. There's no coffee cups on the floor and everything's just perfect in their car. Who are you? Or you go into someone's house and everything's just perfect and the place smells like candles and all the magazines are like perfect. And I don't get you. Who are these perfect people? We like to act like that sometimes in the church. Well, I'm perfect. Everything's great. Really? Well, you know what? We all know you're lying. Or you're incredibly self-deceived. Fortunately, I'm telling you, I do not suffer the tragedy of perfection. Because perfection is a tragedy. Because if you don't realize you need Jesus, you came to the wrong place today, folks. This is a church, this is a place for the people who are messed up. So then why are we always trying? I don't want to confess my sins. I don't want to be open about an area of struggle or brokenness in my life. I don't want to tell anybody really what I'm going through. Why? We already know you're struggling with it. I am too. So why don't we just be honest so we can help each other, pray for each other, maybe hold each other accountable a little bit. Oh, we got to act like everything's perfect. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. We all know we're going to screw up in the next 24 hours. So how do you deal with this reality? Here's an analogy that helps me. Did you know at the end of today, your armpits are going to smell? It's true. I don't know why that is. I mean, you scrub up in the morning, you put on deodorant, you do the best you can, but by the end of the day, despite your best efforts, there's still odor. Why? Because of the environment of your armpits. The high temperature there creates the perfect breeding ground for bacteria and microbes, and they multiply in your armpits by the millions. And your armpits, they also secrete oils. Now, those oils, they don't have any odor themselves, but they trap the bacteria there. And when the bacteria can't escape, they die in the millions. So by the end of the day, you've got the equivalent of the population of Idaho dying in your armpits every single day. No wonder there's a little bit of odor there with all of that carnage going on. On the microbial level, body odor is literally the smell of death and decay. And scrubbing off only works for a little while. I mean, yesterday's shower is not going to help you today. Do you see the picture here? You and I sin daily. We sin all the time. And that sin clings to us. And it begins to smell. And we can't get rid of that smell on our own. We got to wash off. Last week's time in the Word, last week's quiet time, last week's confession, well, that was great for last week. That's not helping you today. The reality is, I sin so often, I need several spiritual cleanings throughout the day. Just like you need to take a shower, a physical shower every single day to stay clean physically, you and I need spiritual showers throughout the day to stay clean before God. When I wake up in the morning, I already know this. No matter how hard I try, at some point in the next 18 hours, I will begin to smell the stench of spiritual death. What hope is there for me? My only hope is good spiritual hygiene. I must go daily to my high priest, Jesus, who is eager and ready to make me clean again. Listen, folks, you're not a failure because you begin to smell. That's just life in this fallen world. It's going to happen. You can't avoid it. When walking through this world leaves you dirty, there's only one thing to do. Go to Jesus and wash off. You know, a farmer, and I guess you would be familiar with this analogy of a farmer. I live in a big city, but don't we have a lot of farms around here? Apparently I do. Or am I just stereotyping Idaho? Anyway, you know, a farmer wakes up in the morning, puts on a clean shirt. He looks in the mirror. His hair is nice. His face is clean. His arms and hands are clean. Shirt's clean. Now he knows he's about to go out into the field. And he's going to work out there 12, 14 hours. He's not going to try to get dirty, but he can't help it. When you're out in the field, you're just going to get dirty. He's not going to roll around in the dirt trying to get dirty. It's just impossible not to get dirty when you walk out in the field. When he comes back 12, 14 hours later and he looks in that same mirror, he sees himself. Now he's got mud on his face and his shirt is dirty and his hair's all messed up. He doesn't look in the mirror and go, "What a failure of a farmer I am. Every time I go into the field, I get dirty. I can't seem to stay clean. I think I'll have to fall away from farming." No, he knew he was going to get dirty. It's not a surprise. What does he do? Beat himself up for getting dirty? No, he takes a shower, he cleans his clothes, he gets clean. Likewise in the spiritual realm. If walking around in this world gets you dirty, and I don't know how it can't with all that we've got going on around us, get clean. Listen, you're not a failure if you begin to smell. That's just what life in this world is like. It's going to happen. You can't avoid it. The blood of Jesus is big enough to cover every failure, every mistake, and every sin in your life. And with God, the race is not won by riding it perfectly. It's won by finishing it. One day God will say to you, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Not perfect servant, but faithful servant. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what your area of struggle and brokenness is. I don't know what's going on deep down where nobody else goes. I don't know about your private life. I've tried to be as open and transparent as I possibly could this weekend. Many of you know way too much about my life that you should ever have to know. But I'll tell you this, folks. Whatever it is your challenges are, know this. God loves you so much that He would rather have you with all of your brokenness and problems and difficulties than not have you at all. The question is this: do you have the courage to follow Jesus in spite of your difficulties, insecurities, and weaknesses? Who will you bow to? Who will you submit to? Who will you give your life to, even when it's hard, inconvenient, and painful? The goal that God has for your life is not that you have a perfect life. The goal that God has for your life is that you have a relationship with Him. And He will even use our temptations and our brokenness and our weaknesses to accomplish that purpose. So temptation, it's not a curse. It's one of the most significant and even exciting moments of your day. It's your chance to declare who you truly long to follow. And it's even necessary. It's one of the main ways that God will grow you into His likeness. It teaches you what your weak points are, and it gives you the tools to keep fighting. And when it happens, when you give in, don't panic when you stumble. Don't sink into insecurity. Instead, run to God for forgiveness and courage. Take a spiritual shower, wash off, rinse up in His grace. You know, one strategy is, I'll say this and close, that has helped me through the years is, as soon as I recognized I've sinned, I want to start praying. It used to be that there was a time in my young Christian life that when I sinned in some certain area, I would feel so bad and so guilty, and I'd beat myself up for hours or even sometimes for days, and I'd feel like, well, I should be praying, but God has obviously put me in the spiritual doghouse, and I'm failing as a Christian, and I can't really pray right now. Forget that garbage. There's nowhere in the Bible that supports any of that line of thinking. From the moment you recognized you sinned, maybe it's gossip, maybe it's slander, maybe you've been prideful and arrogant and thought way too high of yourself than you should, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's envy, maybe it's lust, whatever it is, as soon as you recognize, I just sinned, boom, you want to start praying right away. I don't want there to be any space from the time I recognized I sinned to the time I'm praying. God is waiting for us to return to Him. Now, our actions should follow suit. We're going to do the best we can today. We're not going to roll around in the mud and try to sin. We're doing the best we can, but we're not going to be able to do any of this perfectly. So, because you resist every time you repent, every time you get back up, you're declaring to the world, to the angels, and even to the devil himself, I belong to Jesus, and I will finish this race. That is victory. That is faithfulness. And that is what will echo into eternity. Before I came here, whenever I get an invitation from a church, I always do a little bit of homework. I want to know where I'm going, who these people are. So, I went on the church website. I listened to a couple of lessons, read about some of the things that you're doing in this community. You're a great church. You're doing so many things right. I really applaud all the effort that has gone on to really create a spiritual community here for you and everybody else that lives in this area. It was really great to get to read about you, but honestly, the real joy for me has come that no longer have I just read about you or heard about you, but this weekend, I've gotten to see your faith face to face, and it's been a real pleasure and a real honor. We're going to get ready to sing. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about Jesus, you need prayer, or want to give yourself to the Lord, we invite you to come while we sing this song.